Morning, everyone. We have important work to do in just a few days. The federal government is once again at risk of shutting down because extreme MAGA Republicans in the House are apparently determined to do just that. Unless they manage to extract extreme ransom demands related to their highly partisan policy priorities that have no shot of otherwise being enacted into law under the normal legislative process. To be clear, House Democrats are not going to pay a single right-wing ransom demand. We've not done it in the past. We're not going to do it today. We're not going to do it tomorrow. We're not going to do it next week. It will never be done. The only way forward is to come together in bipartisan fashion in order to meet the needs of the American people. And if Republicans are unable to do that over the next few days, then the only approach is to pass a continuing resolution at the fiscal year 2023 levels. Period. Full stop. The challenge that we confront is that the extreme MAGA Republican agenda, which is deeply unpopular all across America, has nothing to do with improving the quality of life of the American people. The extreme MAGA Republican agenda is all about defaulting on America's debt, shutting down the government, crashing the economy, criminalizing abortion care, cutting Social Security and Medicare, impeaching President Joe Biden, and censuring House Democrats. That's the extreme MAGA Republican agenda. It's been that way from the very beginning of this year, and they've done nothing on their own to improve the quality of life of the American people. House Democrats, we're going to continue to put people over politics, build upon the incredible track record of success under the leadership of President Biden, including the passage of the PACT Act, where we were able to stand up for who had been exposed to toxic substances, burn pits, and Agent Orange, and were unable to get the health care that they needed. Until Democrats, under the leadership of President Biden, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, in the House and the Senate, passed the PACT Act to make sure that millions of veterans now have the health care that they need. That is the work that should be ongoing for the American people, solving challenges for veterans, for hardworking American taxpayers, and for people all across the country. Not the extreme MAGA Republican agenda, which has nothing to do with the health, the safety, or the economic well-being of the American people. In fact, what they want to do is undermine the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people, including by continuing to try and march us to a nationwide abortion ban. Questions?
Leader Jeffries, is a clean CR a red line for you?
A continuing resolution that is at the fiscal year 2023 levels is the only way forward, because that's the status quo. House Democrats are not asking for our policy preferences. We're asking for the status quo to keep the government open.
So would you accept anything other than that?
A clean continuing resolution at the fiscal year 2023 levels is the only way forward.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. That being said, though, we know that Republicans are talking about this laddered CR. Why is that a non-starter for Democrats? And if they choose to go that route, where do you put the chances of a shutdown next week?
Most members of the House Republican Conference have no idea what a laddered CR means, what it represents, or how it would possibly be implemented, let alone the American people. the notion of a laddered CR is another extreme right-wing policy joyride that is reckless and would only crash and burn the federal government. It's a non-starter. Back.
I'd like to ask if you can expand upon your comments on MSNBC yesterday about protecting incumbents who have been critical of Israel. Have you talked to any of those members who are now facing primary challengers, and what would that support look like?
Yeah, my comments speak for themselves. I have more to say in a political environment. We're not in a political environment right now. Thanks. Back to this side. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. So I spoke with members of the CBC this week who have rallied behind Congresswoman Tlaib and who are calling the censure resolution an issue of free speech. What do you say to that?
Yeah, my vote on the censure resolution speaks for itself.
Good morning. Can you characterize this divide among Democrats over the Middle East? I mean, we have Cori Bush today calling for a ceasefire. Obviously, there was a divide over Ms. Tlaib's comments. Can you talk about how this is chewing away at the coalition in the Democratic Party? And number two, do you think that there should be a ceasefire?
Yeah, well, let me tell you about the coalition in the Democratic Party. Maybe I'll save that until the end of my comments. My position on the situation in the Middle East is clear, will continue to be clear, and I believe that's the overwhelming position of the House Democratic Caucus. We will continue to stand by Israel. Our two countries have a special relationship. It's anchored in our shared democratic values and our shared strategic interests, and Israel's place in the world as a Jewish and democratic state and a safe haven for the Jewish people. The events of October 7th, in my view, make clear why Israel must remain a safe haven for the Jewish people. In terms of the prosecution of the war, I think there are three things that the Biden administration is trying to accomplish that I support. First, Israel must successfully defeat Hamas and rid the region of this brutal terrorist regime. Second, we have to do everything possible to bring the hostages back home safely and securely. Third, we have to make sure that we secure the humanitarian assistance for Palestinian civilians who are in harm's way through no fault of their own. Those are the three objectives of the Biden administration. I completely support every single one of them.
Is a ceasefire part of that?
Of course not. I just mentioned those are the three objectives. Those are the three objectives of the Biden administration. The Biden administration has said we're working with the Israeli government on a humanitarian pause. That's the language that the Biden administration has used to facilitate the third objective. Now, in terms of the Democratic coalition, that's a great question. How did the Democratic coalition perform in Ohio? Decisively defeated the forces that want to criminalize abortion care and impose a nationwide ban. That's the extreme MAGA Republican forces on the run in Ohio. How did the Democratic coalition perform in Virginia? Notwithstanding the efforts of the Republican governor of Virginia to take complete control of the legislature, the Democrats won decisively, even flipped a chamber in an off-year election. That's unheard of in modern American politics. How did the Democratic coalition perform in Kentucky, a deep red state? Well, the incumbent Democratic governor improved upon his margins from 4 years ago in a state that isn't even close in a presidential cycle. We can go on and on. In statewide contests all across the country, including in Pennsylvania. That's the lesson of this week as it relates to the performance of the Democratic coalition. Not speculation, not hyperventilating, actual results from the American people. To me, that's what matters more than anything else.
Sir, you guys pulled back on this privilege resolution to censure Congressman Mass yesterday. How concerned are you about this continued censure, tit for tat, and all of these privilege resolutions?
There is no censure tit for tat. What has happened is that the Republicans have weaponized the vehicle of the censure. Why? Because they have no agenda. They have no vision. They have no ideas. They have no legislative track record. They have no data point of progress related to improving the lives of the American people. And guess what? That's why the extreme MAGA Republicans are on the run politically. That's why they were devastated in state after state after state. We're talking about states that are in the red column. And it's because they've got an extreme MAGA Republican problem as it relates to the American people understanding that they're not interested in solving problems, in creating a healthy economy, in dealing with affordability issues. We're still ready, willing, and able to work with our Republican colleagues in a bipartisan fashion. Seems to me that it would be in their best interest to do so. We were told that Republicans would get tired of all the winning. How's that working out?
I'm wondering if you consider the size of the national debt a concern in the budget deficits. Obviously, you disagree with Republicans on how to handle it, but I'm wondering if there's anything you think should be done other than higher taxes.
Yeah, 25% of America's debt, 25%. And we've now been a country for 247 years. 25% of America's debt was accumulated during the 4 years of the Trump administration. So, yes, we should look at some of the policies of the Trump administration, such as the GOP tax scam, where 83% of the benefits went to the wealthiest 1% in America, and our children and grandchildren were asked to shoulder $2 trillion worth of debt to pay for the lifestyles of the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, who weren't even asking for a dramatic tax cut? Yeah, that's a problem. The interesting thing is that when you look at the Democratic track record, we actually reduced the deficit. Bill Clinton inherited a deficit and turned it into a surplus. President Barack Obama inherited a $1.5 trillion deficit and 2 failed wars, as well as a great recession, and turned that $1.5 trillion deficit into a $500 billion deficit, cutting $1 trillion. And despite all of the problems inherited by President Biden, because the previous 4 years was a complete and total train wreck, President Biden was able to oversee one of the most productive Congresses in American history, American Rescue Plan, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, PACT Act, gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years, CHIPS and Science Act, which brought domestic manufacturing jobs back home to the United States of America, and the Inflation Reduction Act, striking a blow against the climate crisis, lowering prescription drug prices, including dropping the price of insulin to $35 a month, and did all of that while reducing the deficit by $1.7 trillion. So our view is that, yes, we are going to continue to deal with our debt and deficit problems because Democratic presidents have always done it. The problem actually comes from the extreme MAGA Republicans. They talk a good game. Their track record is horrible.
On Tuesday night, obviously there are several Biden-won districts on Long Island, and GOP made some
inroads there, including in Suffolk County. What is your assessment of what's going on Long Island? Is winning there still part of the calculus for you to win control of the House next year? And if so, how do you reverse the trends?
Well, the interesting thing is that the Suffolk County District was held by Lee Zeldin for the previous 6 to 8 years. And so it was won by a Republican. It's fascinating to me, tells you the kind of position that my friends on the other side are in. Decisively win in Ohio, decisively win in Virginia, decisively win in Kentucky, decisively win in New Jersey, decisively win in Pennsylvania, win seats that were trending in the other direction in South Brooklyn, flip seats in Rockland County, New York 17. And despite all of that, we hear about Suffolk County, a seat that Republicans have held for the last 5 terms. So do I think that that is in any way indicative of their prospects in November of 2024? It's a laughable prospect. It tells you how desperate they are. And all we're saying is the politics are going to be the politics. I think we've got a tremendous amount of momentum, but there should be a time and place to govern. We want to put people over politics. We want to deal with the child care issues that exist in America right now. We want to deal with making sure that the affordability connectivity program that allows for internet access all across the country continues to be funded. We want to make sure that there's disaster assistance for the American people. These are all requests made by the Biden administration that we should meet because it helps everybody. In urban America, in rural America, in suburban America, in small town America, in the heartland of America, in Appalachia. We're just asking our Republican colleagues to join us to make a difference for the American people. But what we hear from them is that we will never put people over politics. Sad.
I want to go back to something you said up at the top, where you said the number in the CR has to be the FY23, the current spending.
That's our position.
But the Democrats wouldn't insist on policy preferences. Is there some leeway there where basically you guys could give in a little bit on some policy riders in order to if you got the FY23 numbers?
There's not an extreme MAGA Republican policy rider that I think we would find acceptable. Are we going to agree to further criminalize abortion care? Are we going to agree to a nationwide abortion ban? Are we going to agree to gut programs within the military designed to make sure that our military is broadly representative of our society? Are we going to allow the extreme MAGA Republicans to bully LGBTQ children with increasing suicide rates? There's not a single extreme MAGA Republican policy writer that we can agree to, in my humble opinion. Second.
Jeffries, Jonathan next, thank you. I wanted to get your reaction to the debate last night, despite Republican candidates still trying to vie for the attention of the American public. Donald Trump still pulls ahead in the polling, and also President Biden's polling is now showing a downward trend. So what are your thoughts on the debate last night?
I haven't had the opportunity to see it, process it, or think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. On Tuesday, Gabe Amo was elected. He'll become the 60th member of the Congressional Black Caucus, the most in the caucus's history. You're one of the more prominent members of the caucus. I'm curious to know your thoughts about the growth of the group and what you hope Mr. Amo brings to the larger, broader House of Black Caucus.
First of all, my mother may think I'm one of the more prominent members of the CBC. I'm not sure how the CBC feels. But I am. It's an honor to be part of the Congressional Black Caucus, to stand on the historic shoulders of so many giants and personally stand on the shoulders of Shirley Chisholm, one of the original 13 founders, who's, of course, the former representative of neighborhoods like Bedford-Stuyvesant in East New York that I currently represent in Brooklyn. It's an incredible milestone. I think when my class first came, Stephen Horsford, Joyce Beatty, Robin Kelly, Mark Vesey, and Donald Payne Jr., we may have just broken through the 40-person mark in terms of the Congressional Black Caucus. And then over the last 10 years, we've broken through the 50-person mark. And now with the historic election of Gabe Amo, replacing my good friend, David Cicilline, to hit that 60-person number, I think is an incredible milestone. Congressional Black Caucus is not just an important part of the House Democratic Caucus family, but the Congressional Black Caucus is the conscience of the Congress in so many ways, fighting for social justice and economic justice and racial justice to lift up all Americans. And what's also interesting is that a significant number of the Congressional Black Caucus members don't represent majority-minority districts. Further evidence of the progress that we've made since 1971, when those 13 incredible members, Lou Stokes, Charlie Rangel, John Conyers, Shirley Chisholm, and so many other legends, first had the wisdom and the foresight to start an incredible organization.
Can you talk about your agenda in Puerto Rico this weekend?
Yeah, I look forward to participating with Chairwoman Nanette Barragan and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus as part of the continuing Congressional Hispanic Caucus on the Road series, which will make a stop in Puerto Rico to honor Puerto Rican veterans on Veterans Day as it's celebrated tomorrow, and to talk about the things that we need to continue to do to support our veterans from Puerto Rico and throughout the mainland of the continental United States.
Any meeting with political parties there?
I have no meeting planned with any political parties on the ground. I think the governor of Puerto Rico is hosting an event with the governor of New York that I hope to be able to attend. Thanks.
Now, you've been critical of Republicans for pushing for spending cuts past the debt ceiling agreement, but are Democrats in many ways falling back on their end of the deal by pushing a $105 billion emergency spending package?
No, the spending package can and should be taken up in a manner that is different from the agreement related to the end of the year spending levels, both on the national security side as well as on the domestic side. And so one has nothing to do with the other. These are emergency requests that are being made by President Biden that I think should be taken up and debated and put on the floor for up or down votes. Now, Senate Democrats and Senate Republicans have agreed to the top line spending numbers that was part of the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act. House Democrats have agreed to the top line spending numbers that were part of the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act. President Biden has agreed to the top line spending numbers that were part of the Bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act. The only group that's out there on an island, as has been the case from the beginning of this Congress, are the extreme MAGA Republicans, who broke the agreement that they not only insisted they negotiate, but passed into law with about 2/3 of the House Republican Conference supporting the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And then a week later, they broke their word. And all we're asking is that in this town, as we try to make progress for the American people, that people keep their word. Perhaps nothing more significant than that. Not just for member-to-member relationships, but for the American people. I just want to make sure, is there any other additional questions that people haven't asked questions yet? Thanks.
I wanted to follow up on.
You asked a question already, is that right? Okay, I'm sorry.
Can
Yeah,
I get a second?
sorry. Yeah.
So we're.
I got to spread the love. It's the Brooklyn way. Yeah.
Shutdown is rapidly approaching. Speaker Mike Johnson doesn't seem to have unveiled a plan that we know of as of yet. Do you think this is not going to affect that he's so new to his job? What do you make of the lack of a plan so close? And is this perhaps a weakness of Speaker Johnson? He hasn't come out with a plan yet?
Well, I've had several very positive, forward-looking, authentic conversations with Speaker Johnson, and I expect that that will continue to be the case. And I will continue to say to him that we are ready, willing, and able to work with House Republicans in a bipartisan fashion to solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers on any issue. But at the same time, we will continue to push back against Republican extremism whenever necessary. We have laid that framework out since January 3rd, and that will be the approach that we continue to take. It's what we did with the prior speaker, and it's what we'll continue to do with Speaker Mike Johnson. He's got issues that he has to work out in his conference, but those are issues for him to work out. And I hope we can find a partnership for the American people, not as Democrats or Republicans, but as Americans. Last question. You asked already, right? No. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Peter Schumer is reported.
A lot of people in the room today. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Last question, yeah.
Peter Schumer is reportedly preparing to move towards some kind of CR in the Senate. Have you been looped in on that, or have there been coordination between you and him on that CR?
Yeah, I've spoken both to the White House as well as to Leader Schumer on a wide variety of issues, including the progress that hopefully will continue to be made in a bipartisan way in the Senate. I've got full, complete, and total confidence in Leader Schumer's ability to get this done. Thanks, everyone.